My background is I grew up on a dairy and potato farm in the western part of New York State. Went to Cornell University. When I got out, there was no room on home farm. So I was looking for something to do, and I became a county agent. So for 10 years, I was a farm management dairy agent in Chenango County. And during that period of time, part of the reason I took that job, it allowed me to go back and get my master's degree while on extension leave. And my thesis work was about intergenerational transfer of family businesses. Back in those days, the estate tax exemption was only $60,000. Farms are growing rapidly, and we're trying to figure out how we're going to get these down to the next generation. Rather than 11 million, and whether the exemption is 60,000 or 11 million, that never was the problem. The problem was always getting people to sit down and start talking about, understand their plan, where it's going to go. That's one of my grandfathers. That's on my dad's side. That was the herd coming in. We had 3 cows. That's me in the upper right. Actually, I'm milking that cow in the pasture. We had so few cows, it was easier. Talk about robots. I was the robot. We used to go out in the field and milk the cows out there and then bring the milk back. So these things have changed. Now we bring the cows to the barn. We have a team of people that work with us. We need to have people that can work together, have skill sets to work together, and have common culture to work together, and that's our team. And every one of the people on the team are utilized somewhere in the process of working with these family businesses that we work with. The thing that we found as far as sustainability of farms, that's what it's all about. There's 3 legs. That's the old milk stool. You go back far enough. And there are 3 legs to that milk stool that are really important. On the far left is the financial estate side of things. We find out that if mom and dad aren't secure in their finances, they're not going to be willing to give up control. On the estate planning part, that's all. We run trial probates to talk about it later, and that's how things are going to happen just the way they are now. Not what you hope to do. It's the way it is right today. What's going to happen, we show that. And I'm more concerned, you'll see later on, about the sibling tax than I am the estate tax. The sibling tax, where everything gets divided up amongst all the family members who aren't even active in the farm. Then in the middle, you have the part that Jennifer works on. That's the management succession. She'll dig into that piece, that leg a little deeper. And on the far right is the business succession. That's the actual transfers of the family businesses down to the next generation, bringing in key employees. And more on these farms, we're finding that business succession has somebody in there that doesn't have the same last name. On these larger farms, key people become very important. So it's not just the last name part. The bottom line of all this is we'll get right to the bottom. Most businesses, whether it's this country or other countries, fail because there's no plan put in place. Less than 10% of the family businesses make it to the 3rd generation. That's amazing when you have 95% of the businesses in this country are family business, that so few make it. What we found is we got this fork in the road, and throughout your business career, you're going to run into forks in the roads constantly. And if you don't have a goal, you don't have a target, you're not thinking about a plan. When you get that fork in the road where they're expanding, retiring, the barn burns down, what do we do? All those kind of things. We need to have some thought process ahead of time is where we're going to go. And this is the lesson from Alice in Wonderland, was that Alice got the fork in the road, and she said to Cheshire Cat, which way do I go? He said, where are you going? She said, I don't know. He said, won't make any difference. Take either fork. And with our family business work with, we're trying to make them understand with those forks in the road, they're going to be there to plan ahead for them. There's 2 sides we talked about, the succession, successful succession, try and say that quick. Successful succession of these family businesses. On the left part is the easy part. The estate planning, the business succession part, that's really easy. It's a pen, a paper, it's contracts, you can write it. On the right-hand side, the part Jennifer works in, the management succession is a much more difficult part because you can't will your management ability or the ability to run the farm down to the next generation easily. And also in the management succession, even the senior generation, in many of the cases, has a lot to learn there because they've grown up being a worker in the farm operation, and getting out of their role and managing it is sometimes difficult for them. Everything has a process and a way we work. We start out on the left. We want to talk. We spend a lot of time sitting down with people. How did you get to where you are? Where do you think you want to go? We're trying to get the family financial philosophy down there, how they look at the world, what are their goals. I get into the family tree. As I understand the family tree, everything comes out of the closet. We're going to find about the in-laws, the outlaws, everybody in that family, how they work together, don't work together. The family tree is really important. The people that aren't in the farm, how they might be thinking, what their thought process are. We then run a trial probate. That's just taking everything the way it is right now and run it as if you died, what's going to happen. We look at number 5, that's all about retirement flows. We look at cash flows of buying the business, look at ways to transfer and protect the wealth, trusts, etc. All those things are down through there. But we basically go through that process every time we work with a business. And the whole purpose is to have a standard process but customized results, because every family is a little different. Red line, flip to the next one. What I call the red line, that's getting people to sit down and think about what it's going to take to drive their retirement years, where it's going to come from, and then figure out mathematically and put a number as to what that red line is. You might have $10 million in your business, but you don't need $10 million to run your life. You might need $1.5 million, $2 million, some number. That's the red line we're trying to identify. Then further, where is that going to come from and how is it going to come from? Because until the parents particularly understand how that's all going to work, they're going to be very reluctant to go deep into estate planning, deep into transfers. They're going to want to control things until they really understand that. There's also a chunk of that farm business that is the farm viability piece. It's got to be there. The parents can't sell off. That's usually the land. We're going to have to protect and preserve that land someplace. It's not going to be going off to non-farm heirs. It might be there available for farm heirs to use. It might be there to provide income to the parents, but that's a very important thing we have to protect and keep it there. And then above that, we have to think about what are we going to do for those heirs that aren't actively involved in the farm? How are we going to provide for them? Do we have specific targeted bequests, or do we have any charitable type thing we want to do? This is an example. We're going to come back and dive into this example a little deeper later on. And what we sat down with his family, this is about a 300-cow dairy, and we spent a lot of time trying to, first of all, get to understand the family. There was one child in the farm. There was 3 children who were off the farm. Dad at that time was about 70. The son was basically an employee, a hired man on the farm. So what are you going to want out of this? And after literally several meetings, believe it or not, it took us to find out that what they really need is about $5,000 a month. They wanted the farm to continue to provide housing and all those kind of things, and then they wanted the farm to continue the next generation. And they wanted to have, and we finally identified a number, a target amount that they wanted to go to the next generation, not the next generation, but the non-farm children, what they would be entitled to receive. Part of this started, though, taking a look at their retirement. On the right-hand side were some of the sources that they're going to have. Social Security, they had been paying some Social Security along the way. There's some coming in there. They actually had accumulated a couple $100,000 on the side. They had some money to rely on there. They didn't really have a retirement plan, but they had some investments. And on the left-hand side is what was required. Required is what I call a paycheck. That's what you got to have. That's what you got to need. Desired is maybe the play check, the extras you might do in life to take a trip, do some things, and how we're going to provide for them. So we could mathematically identify what's coming in from off the farm, like Social Security, and then dive down to what the farm is going to provide and how we're going to get it to them. The number that most people need for retirement time is a lot more than they think. So if I ask the question, what's it going to take to generate $1,000 a month, $12,000 a year, after-tax spendable, plus cover inflation? Just to put inflation in perspective, at 3% inflation, $1 today when you're 65, 24 years later, when you're 89, you're going to need $2 to do the exact same thing that the dollar did before. So to provide that $12,000, you need about $300,000 in a piggy bank someplace. At 4%, kicks out to $12,000. But next year, because inflation, you're going to need more, and you'll actually erode that $300,000 out of there. So it's a pretty good chunk of money. How does that apply to the farm? Well, how it applies to the farm is when mom and dad say they want $5,000 a month and they expect the farm to pay that, they literally just said to the farm heirs, you're going to be buying $1.5 million worth of farm assets to provide that $5,000 a month. $5,000 a month times $300,000, that's what it takes to provide $1,000 a month. 5 times $300,000, $1.5 million. So a lot of times parents think they're giving the farm to the next generation. And the next generation is really buying the farm. Mom and dad stay on the farm provides for the rest of their life. The non-farm heirs are off doing whatever they do, and they think the son or daughter in the farm is getting it. No, they're buying it. There's a big chunk that they're actually buying. You can look at selling the farm. So if you got a 1,000-cow dairy, it might be worth $12 million, up and down, depends what's going on in the world. But you really don't have $12 million. You got debt, $3,000 a cow really below debt on these farms. But you got income tax, you got market adjustment. We're seeing the market adjustment right now. I just saw 1,000 cow dairy selling for $900 a cow. So you had market adjustment, you got sales costs, it's the realtors, all that kind of stuff that goes on. And then your wife might not want to live in a tent after you sell the farms. You might want to actually have a house. So you're going to go out and buy a house someplace. So when you get all done, we got maybe $3 million left over. But if there's two partners, that's $1.5 million. And then we're back to that $5,000 a month that they wanted anyway. So was it really worth it to consider liquidating the operation? Well, maybe you could have continued it and done better by the parents and the next generation. This slide is, most people think about estate planning is all about dying, and really it's for the living. It's all about the people that are left behind and how what you spent a lifetime creating and building, how it's going to be transferred on, how it's going to continue on to benefit your family. One of the questions people ask or need to think about at least are how do assets pass? We use this because we work at dairy farms a lot. Gift cow, they pass by gift is one way. You can transfer it down by gift to the next generation. And then the rest of the cow part, contract, to the extent you have a named beneficiary in life insurance, annuities, IRA, pensions, all that kind of stuff. Those are contract ways that assets are going to pass. Might be buy-sell agreements. That's a big thing in a lot of farm operations. Assets are going to pass by contract. We have ownership, a jointly held real estate, for example. It's going to pass automatically to survivor joint investment accounts. And finally, those are what they call non-probate assets. So you might find an awful lot of your estate passes outside your will. And then the probate assets are the things that pass under your will. Those are assets that are in your own individual name. What we like to do with every family we work with is run a trial probate. We start out, as you can see up there, without going down through everything. We try and understand again what your goals are. We then spend a lot of time inventorying everything just the way it is, how it's owned, all the titles, review the legal documents, all those things that can control how things pass at your death. We then run a trial probate. We pretend the person passed away right then, not later on if they fix something, right the way it is now. That's what motivates people to do things when they see the way it looks, the way it's currently structured. And then out of that, we understand where our goals was, what's really happening, what do we need to do to structure to achieve those goals. That becomes the plan. We spend a lot of time in transferring these businesses down on the tax efficient method of doing it. That's going to be one of the drivers, but the point we're trying to make early on, each generation needs each other. If we go down this family working together, G1 is generation one, that's like mom and dad. They have a lot of things they can put in there, the normal assets, but down the bottom, that experience obviously is something that's pretty important, as well as system and processes. What's the next generation got to offer? And because this is their enthusiasm, their passion, their commitment. They might have a truck and a few cows, but at the end of the day, that's not what's going to drive it. What's going to drive this operation going forward in the future is their management, their passion, their commitment. I'd like to take through a quick example. This is a kind of a typical farm situation. There's 4 kids, only one stayed on the farm. Mom and dad are about 70s, son's in his early 50s, about 50 actually at the time. He'd been there working this farm for 30 some years. He's the one who stayed on the farm. The farm had grown from about 50 cows to about 300 cows, 100 acres to about 400 acres. There are also some significant mineral rights that might be there. The son, unfortunately, he's a hired hand. He'd been working hard all those years, helped grow this thing, but he was not a partner. Mom and dad, they want to keep their lifestyle. They want to see the farm go on. They want to be fair to all the heirs, and we'll talk about what fair means in a second. So one thing we had to do, we had to arrive at what's the value of this thing, because the value of a whole unit, land, cows, equipment, buildings, and everything else, when you go to transfer that, there's a number of discounts that we find over the years that apply. If you're transferring a partnership or a business interest like corporate stock or an LLC, you're transferring partial interest. There's no control. There's lack of marketability. It's not like a public market. You're trying to avoid sales costs. All those things can add up to about a 30% valuation discount is what we arrived at this case for the things down the bottom. Avoidance of all those costs. The mom and dad want to retain life use of the house, and they want to retain a bunch of the mineral rights. So we discount everything 30% in terms of being transferred to the next generation. Fair, here's where I talk about it's like gold in the ground versus gold in the hand. The son in this case on a farm is getting like gold in the ground. He's got to work this thing. He's got to make it work. The non-farm heirs, if they're going to get cash in their hand, that's like gold in your hand. That's a whole different value set where they're getting that asset and go on about their life. And the guy on the home farm's got to make it all work, plus take care of mom and dad, provide for their income.
If I can just add to this story, I mean, this was a really difficult case in the beginning because the farm heir was really, had just been a hired hand. He hadn't achieved any equity in the business. And the non-farm heirs, some sisters, the brother was great, but there were a couple of sisters, and one of the sisters had a husband who thought he was, you know, the big financial guy that knew all the right answers and said, you know, you don't need to use anyone to help you transfer this farm. I can take care of it for you. And the sisters thought it wasn't fair that the brother was getting a bigger share. So there was a lot of family education, a lot of dialogue that had to go on. And that's when we really came up with this concept that equal is not fair.
So in this case, we actually, the family meetings first involved mom and dad. Spent a lot of time with dad. Dad took me for a ride in the pickup truck. Usually when I get a ride in the pickup truck, he means he wants to tell me everything, and he wants his story heard really well with nobody else around. So we rode around the pickup truck. We got that out of the way. Then we had a chance to sit down with mom. It became obvious. Mom was the lady in the middle between both generations, the husband, the son, all that kind of stuff. She was pretty level-headed. Dad, in this case, was kind of emotional. And then we had a son who's a worker bee. He's been killing himself, literally getting out there at 3:30 in the morning, driving this thing and not getting really a lot of extra credit for it. We then went and had meetings with the non-farm heirs, particularly one sister. We had one sister off the farm who was the driver of the non-farm heirs. Everybody kind of listened to her. And so I had to get her into camp and understand this thing and work her through this process. So part of that working her through the process is the next slide. We had to get her and everybody thinking about the sweat equity is not really gifting. In other words, when the son came on this farm, it was a 50-cow dairy worth about $180,000. Now, 30 years later, because of all the work he put in, plus mom and dad, an original $180,000 of assets, it had grown to just under $3 million and 300 cows and a bunch of stuff. So what they decided is we worked our way through. We literally went back and looked at values, some old farm credit statements way back in the beginning to refresh their memory, what it was like back then, talked about all the changes, how they occurred, what the son's involvement was. And when they got all done, they agreed that 40% of that growth occurred because of the hard work and effort that the son had put into that. And so we call it a gift when we turn it over to the son, but really it was giving him credit for the sweat equity over the years, in this case, $700,000. So how do we transfer this $2.9 million? First of all, we went in, we had a 30% discount. And that was at, so we discounted the property down to like 1.9 million. There was 100,000 of debt in there. Then we gave the credit to the son for 700,000 of equity. That's the part that he actually contributed that he never got credit for because he's never a partner over the years. The purchase price, and by the way, we spent a lot of time on how we allocated these values to get the best tax efficient treatment, to have the assets taxed as capital gains or no tax at all. And in the middle, we ended up with the 900,000. That's what it was going to take to drive the 55,000 a year income for the parents that they wanted out of, plus the farm was going to be responsible for the housing expense and probably occasionally provide a truck or something. There was some money left over, and the non-farm heirs were going to get all the life insurance. We actually bought life insurance to an extra 300,000 credit to the non-farm heirs, plus there's some non-farm assets, and the parents retained 50% of their mineral rights, which would go to the non-farm heirs as well. And then there's some value left over. And my mom always talked about giving something with a warm hand, not wait until you die. So they essentially gave the son his future inheritance at that time. Remember the sweat equity he earned, the purchase price he's paying for. The warm hand was just giving him that gold in the ground that he has to work. And at the parent staff, they're going to get the life insurance investments and half of the mineral rights. A lot of time, this is what you're looking on the board is about a year and a half. It took about 18 months to get to that point. And when you work with farm families, there's an emotional balance sheet that's much bigger than the financial balance sheet. And once you work your way through the emotional balance sheet and get people kind of understanding, working, talking together, you can finally make some progress.
So this is in effect like it's a way to structure the transfer.
Right.
So, you know, you might call it a structured transfer, or sometimes we actually use the term structured sale. And it's structured because you're thinking carefully about how to move assets from one party to the next party in the most tax efficient way. Because as you always tell me, every time you sell something or transfer something in this country, there's a tax on it. So there's a tax at your death. There's a sales tax when you buy something. There's an income tax when you get paid money. So you can't just unlimitedly give things away. There's a gift tax. There's always a tax. So we always have to look for the most efficient way.
The $900,000, which is a series of notes, those notes, by the way, at the second death had a self-canceling feature. So it essentially is going to provide, or like 30-year type notes, going to provide income for mom and dad for life. But at their death, they went away, and the other heirs got the life insurance and the other non-farm asset at that point in time. This other thing on this farm, the daughter who had not got a lot of respect for the daughter-in-law, as she came in and ran the calf operation, the book, she's done a fabulous job. She had a chance to get in there and do all this stuff. The farm has expanded dramatically. They've got the production up. The guy's done well in selling to cattle, and everybody's happy. And unfortunately, at this stage, the father has passed away, but at least prior to his death, all this stuff was in order and ready to go.
And I think the other part of this story, which is it started out really difficult because the non-farm heirs weren't on board, but through taking the time to go through the process, to openly communicate, to have a facilitator be able to help with that family dialogue and to help educate, in the middle of it all, at one point, one of the daughters refused to speak to the mom, who is the sweetest lady. But after we worked through it and we took the time and we treated everybody with respect, in the end, everyone all came back together and everybody understood, because they got to see, the son is really guaranteeing mom and dad income for the rest of their lives. And it's his hard work that's going to do that. Nobody else was going to step up and support them. So they all kind of got it. They all understood that, equal would not have been fair.
And you had to remind them that, let's go back, whether it takes pictures or numbers or statements, and show you what this farm looked like when you all left the farm, because you haven't been there in 30 years yourselves, and understand all that. Meanwhile, just like if one of the daughters died, the son didn't expect to inherit anything from them, so they shouldn't expect to inherit a lot of what he's helped build up. So we got through all that with a lot of meetings. Big farms, just bigger numbers. All the planning tools we use, all the fair or not equal, all the things we're trying to do. What we're always trying to do is what we call get the elephant through the keyhole. On a 4,000 cow farm, the elephant's a little bigger. It might be $30, $40 million elephant. We're trying to get through there. We're trying to get down to the next generation. In this case, we're spending a lot of time trying to avoid estate taxes, because dad's estate at this point was like a $30 million estate. And to skip to the next slide, through a lot of planning, a lot of time, and again, this is almost like 3 years, we're able to get that estate tax down to a couple $1 million bucks, so we reduced it by about $9 million. We have land that's in trust to provide income for mom and dad for life, and yet it'll be out of their estate. It'll also be there to utilize for the next generation, and even provide rental income off to heirs that aren't involved in the farm. The sons won't be buying the farm twice. Life insurance, we have to fund things. We use life insurance a lot to provide for non-farm heirs. We use life insurance to pay down debt. We use life insurance to buy assets. We hope not to use life insurance to pay for estate tax. We try and do all the planning we can to minimize the estate tax. I'd rather the insurance got used for buyout purposes, reducing debt, and take care of non-farm heirs. Sometimes it helps to flip the next one to see what.
Make the point. It's the only asset.
Yeah. The beauty about life insurance is it's the only asset on the planet that you can arrange to avoid both income and estate tax. There's always a game that you can avoid both. Just to put in perspective, how I got in this business, I was working on my thesis trying to figure out ways to provide for buying out farm operation for the next generation. I was looking over on the left-hand side, and that's going down and trying to figure out how we're going to borrow this money. Remember, dad's equity became the son's debt. We already had a bunch of debt to a lender, and now we're about to convert dad's equity into debt to have the son buy it out. That's really going to leverage things up. But $1 million loan, 20 years, 5%, it's going to be $80,000 a year, or total $1.6 million. We could go over, I discovered and doing work on my thesis, we could buy life insurance for $20,000, which initially when they say $20,000 or $1 million sounds like a lot. When you think about it, it's only 2% of the face. It's like financing $1 million for 2%. It's like going down to the bank essentially and financing it for 2% and never having to make principal payments. This is a 20-pay policy and you're done. So the life insurance, instead of costing money, save money. It's $1.6 million without the insurance. It's $400,000 with it. And if the farm business can't generate the $20,000 to pay for the $1 million, how the heck are they going to end up being able to provide to take care of the $80,000? I just had an unfortunate case here a couple of years ago where they decided not to buy this insurance, which would have been a total cost of $12,000 over 2 years, and it was term insurance. And the person died, and they're now paying $173,000 a year for 30 years because they didn't have the insurance. The insurance would have cost $12,000. So it's risk protection, and it's very effective.
It's a good funding solution.
Well, it's also permanent life insurance, by the way, which is on the right-hand side. That is the only kind of insurance you can buy for an event that's certain. Everything else, all the other insurance you buy is for an event that might occur. The barn might burn, you might get sick, your car might get hit. But permanent life insurance, everybody unfortunately ultimately passes away. And the certainty of it being there to take care of things you want to take care for is really important in terms of peace of mind.